Hello and welcome to Follow Jesus. In the story this week, I talked about how the first followers of Jesus got to know who he is, how it was the experience of knowing Jesus that changed their lives, and how even today we need to take the time to get to know Jesus. So today I want to do just that. We're still looking at John chapter 1, and the apostle begins his gospel by explaining who Jesus is. His description of Jesus here becomes the lens through which we view the rest of the book of John. So he starts by saying, "In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God." Notice that John says that the Word was with God, meaning that he's separate from God, but then he immediately states that the Word was God, highlighting the paradox of having two identifiable individuals, and yet they are still one God. This also informs our understanding of the creation story in Genesis 1. We find in Genesis that God actually spoke the world into existence. He didn't fashion the earth from matter that already existed like a sculptor. He simply said, "Let there be light." And there was light. "Let there be stars," and there were stars. So looking at these statements through the lens of John, we can see that God's speech, his word, was the action. In this sense, God was he who willed it. The living word, which proceeded from God, was he who accomplished it. And this leads us to verse 3, which states, "All things came into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being." So God willed the creation of the earth, and his active word was that which caused everything to come into being. In verse 4, John gives us new information about the Word. "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." So the Word was not just active in the formation of the world, but the Word is alive and is what sustains life on the planet. Also, the light is not daylight, it's the light that enlightens every man and makes them aware of God. So the same Word that was spoken by God, that was the activity of creation, remains in the world to give life and enlighten men. And from this point on, John will use the words word and light interchangeably. Verse 5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness did not comprehend it." So it's a restatement that the word is active, but it now introduces the world's ultimate dilemma. And this verse will find its meaning in upcoming verses. So verses 6 through 8 identify John the Baptist as the one who would direct people toward the light. And this is actually exceedingly important to John's discussion because in his culture, it was really important to have witnesses to any truth to which he'd be testifying. And John the Baptist was still very well respected, even decades after his death, so invoking his name here lends credence to the testimony of John the Apostle. Verse 9 states, "There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightens every man." Verse 10, "He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him." So now we really can get a grasp on the previous statement about the dilemma of the darkness. The light is in the world, but the darkness doesn't even realize that the light is shining on. Men in the world are alive because of the word and enlightened by the light, but they don't even recognize its existence. Verse 11, "He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him." This is a reference to the nation of Israel, to whom the written word of God was entrusted. And despite that they'd done a truly excellent job preserving the word of God in the scriptures, when the living word entered into the world, they rejected him. Now verses 12 and 13 state, "But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, even to those who believe on his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." In other words, there are people in the world who recognize the living light, the living word, and accept him for who he is. Now the phrase "believe in his name" doesn't mean the way that I understand what the name of the guy across the street from me is. It's to believe in everything that makes him who he is. So the result of belief in the living word is that those who believe gain the right to become the children of God, which, by the way, goes against the common thought that all men are considered children of God. We hear that a lot in pop culture and even in churches. But these verses make clear that while we were all lovingly created by God, we are not all children of God simply by the virtue of being born. This would be the will of the flesh. Nor are we children of God just because we believe in peace and enjoy singing an Alan Jackson song about one big happy family. This would be the will of men. But those who believe in the light of God, these are children of God. And that is only given by God as a gift. In other words, we can't even earn that through our belief. It is God's gift to the believers of the living word to make them his children. Verse 14, "And the word became flesh and dwelt among men, and we saw his glory. Glory as of the only begotten from the Father." So John here makes the clear statement that the word became flesh, living as a human being on earth. And he now names two of the identities of God. So there's God the Father, and then the Word of God is the Son. Now, it's probably because of this extraordinary proclamation that John brings out his witnesses again. So first it's himself, he's a witness, and he uses the word we, so he indicates multiple witnesses. And then in verse 15, he talks about John the Baptist again. And when he quotes John the Baptist as saying, he existed before me, what he's actually talking about is this idea that Jesus existed before his birth as the Word of God. You see, Jesus was not only related to John the Baptist, but he was physically younger than John the Baptist. So John's statement, he existed before me, bears witness to what John the Apostle is writing in his book about the pre-existence of the Son of God. Verse 16, for of his fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace. Now this could be another statement about witnesses. We disciples knew and experienced his grace. I prefer to think of it as broader than that, as in the light that enlightens every man. We have all received his fullness, his unlimited grace, whether we accept him or not. After all, he did give us the very lives that we live. And so finally, John has put a name to the Word, Jesus Christ. And he not only identifies clearly that Jesus is God, but he also tells us that Jesus is the only one through whom we can experience grace and truth. And he is the only one through whom we can begin to understand the very nature of God. So to recap quickly who the Apostle John says that Jesus is. Jesus is the living Word of God through whom the world and everything in it came into being. Jesus is the one through whom we live. Jesus is the one who enlightens us. He is the source of grace and truth. He reveals to us the very existence of God. And he even came into the world in the flesh so that we would no longer be lost in uncomprehending darkness. And anyone who believes in him, who believes in all of who he is, will receive the gift of being considered a child of God. And that's who Jesus is. And this is why it is so important for us to continue to get to know the person of Jesus Christ. God bless you, and have a great day.